I've always had this philosophy. I never, ever worry about the money.
Right.
I've just got this theory. If you do really good quality work and you have really good quality outcomes and people that are coming through our service have a good experience and they share that, then the money will come.
And that right there is goodwill. In terms of improving the value of our business, goodwill and unlocking goodwill is a very important concept. Who would be better than someone that runs a charitable organisation?
I suppose our business model is we're in the people business. The person that is utilising your service is the person that's experiencing everything about your service. It's how you answer the phone, it's how you open the door, it's how we want to be treated.
I use this word regularly. It's either a relationship or it's a transaction.
Years ago when I was working in a business environment, it became transactional because there were a lot of people that needed help. How do we increase the amount of people that we need to help? It was a disaster because transaction is start and finished. Professional relationships with people are ongoing. People that come into our service and stay for a period of time and then leave our service, they'll probably re-engage at some point. One of the things that I am incredibly proud of is everyone understands the foundational principles of what we're trying to achieve in the work that we do. That is a really good strategy for any organisation. I want to have strong leadership in leading where we're going, but I want to be collaborative, I want to be kind, I want to make sure my team feels safe and secure, and I want it to be a beautiful place to work.
This is not just a charity and gig. It's fundamental, right? And we haven't talked about any dollars and cents.
It makes the difference. Positive culture, positive outcomes, positive business.
Welcome back to Let's Talk Business. I'm your host, James Price. Today, our guest is Narelle Hand. Narelle is CEO of the Northern Beaches Women's Shelter. Narelle, it's great to have you as a guest.
Thank you
Thank you for joining us. And
thank you.
As business owners, in terms of improving the value of our business, goodwill and unlocking goodwill is a very important concept. I felt who would be better, no better, than to talk about goodwill than someone that runs and leads a charitable organisation, a not-for-profit. Because at the end of the day, you've got to deliver a lot of services and your clients don't have the means to pay for them. So you've got to raise funds to deliver those services.
Yeah.
And so goodwill is a big part of how your organisation operates. I would thought. Yeah?
Oh, absolutely. Our organisation, Northern Beaches Women's Shelter, was originally the Manly Women's Shelter.
Yes.
And it started in 2010. And it was really started because there was this enormous gap of people in the community that were homeless. Yeah. And Narelle Hand and her husband Peter, fantastic people in our community, really, exposed the issue that we were seeing because Ellie was volunteering down at the community centre. I think that's really where you see that goodwill come into action, just right from the foundational beginning of our organisation, because there's a need.
Yes.
And it wasn't being fulfilled in a government response. So the community got together, lots of people rallied to raise funds, and started what is now known as Northern Beaches Women's Shelter, but started as Manly Women's Shelter, and it was all on fundraising. It's incredible.
So it's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because people they were acts of kindness for nothing in return. Well, nothing in individual in return.
Yeah.
But how do you, as the leader of that organisation now, I mean, how do you go about engendering that engagement from your community?
I mean, it really is. It is multi-layered, because especially a safe house. We're providing crisis care to women and children that are escaping sometimes, the lowest points in their life, and it's not something we can go out and sell. No. The purpose of what we're doing is actually the value that people want to be aligned with. So I suppose step one is that we want to be able to talk to the experience of people that are coming through our service. Obviously, we're bound by confidentiality, so we have to make sure that what we're able to share is, obviously already consented to. So I suppose it's not like we can, do a video of our service and take people through and kind of, really show the operation at full. So it's actually that's a really hard bit for us in being able to show the safety and positive outcomes of people that come through our service. So the residents that we work with, their experience with, I suppose, telling the story of hope. And people tend to want to make a difference in their community when they see people that are vulnerable. And I suppose for me, one of the big things that we've always tried to instill in the way that we operate our organisation is that we put the service user's hat on when we're thinking about how we implement our service operation, how we induct, our team into understanding, really getting the empathy of what does it feel like for a person to come into our service. And so I suppose when we actually get that right, when people know that they can come into our organisation, we have to build trust really quickly, we have to build rapport really quickly, we have to, I suppose, give them enough information that they'll be able to feel like they can come into our service without even really seeing the service.
Yes.
The same thing for people that, want to contribute to our service or provide funds to our service. I've got to be able to talk to what we're doing so that people can understand enough about what we're doing and what we're trying to achieve and the outcomes that we're actually providing for people. So you're kind of taking them on a journey without giving too much about someone's experience. So it's a really hard balance.
It is a hard balance because it's such a sensitive area, and you're dealing with people in crisis.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, people are coming to our service at sometimes the lowest point in their lives. And so for me, everything we do, I remember it's like that 101 of social work. It's not what they said, it's how they made me feel. So, we really need to be highly emotionally intelligent workers.
Yes.
But I think, when I talk about with philanthropists or people that are supporting our organisation, when we talk about the story of hope of what can be achieved for someone, when we talk about a situation really aligning them with it could be me, it could be you. It's bad situations that have happened to someone. They're not bad people.
So this is, we touched on that when we had a chat yesterday,
yes,
right?
Yes.
And I think it was in the context of homelessness.
Oh, absolutely.
So what you're trying to sort of indicate to people is don't think it's someone else's problem because, as a result of some unfortunate circumstances, the loss of job or, an accident or something, you could be that homeless person.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think when you build that understanding with someone that might want to contribute or support your service, and you can actually showcase the pathway forward for someone, then they're a part of someone's journey to recovery or healing, and that's what builds the goodwill.
Yes.
I am really, have a high level of integrity, and I'm sure everyone that's listening and, business people need to, and it's really about always being trustworthy, always being transparent, making sure that every donation dollar goes as far as possible. Everything we say we're going to do, we do, and that includes to our residents. We're not making promises that we can't commit to. So, and I suppose when people, it's really about setting out the foundational practice. Like we are practice professionals. We have to, maintain a very high quality of practice because it's people's lives and we're in the safety business,
So I want to tease out the quality bit that you just touched on there.
Yeah, absolutely.
But before I do, you spoke a lot about putting yourselves in your users'
resident shoes. Absolutely.
Do you think there's some learnings there for any business, whether it be a charity, not-for-profit, or a full-on private commercial business?
Absolutely. I think 100%. One of the biggest things about, I suppose, the way that we work could be transferred into any organisation. The person that is utilising your service is the person that's experiencing everything about your service. So for me, it's the way we answer the door. Yeah. It's greeting someone with warmth. Even when you're in the middle of something and you're really frustrated or whatever, you don't turn around and go, you turn around and you engage with warmth. It's how you answer the phone. It's how you open the door. It's how you, talk to people. It's how you don't make people feel like you're in a rush. It's like, it's how we want to be treated.
Yeah, it is. But excuse my flippantness, but is that easy to say? But how do you actually achieve it? Like, do you have a rule book that sets out the standards, or do you recruit for a certain person with a certain kind of empathy and qualities, or how does that pervade the organisation?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we are one of our practice models is person-centred care. So basically person-centred care is the way that we work. So we're always thinking about the person that's experiencing the service.
Yeah.
We're also trauma-informed.
Yes.
So people that come to our organisation need to have trauma-informed evidence practice skills, because everyone that comes to our service, irrespective of their situation, will have had experienced some form of trauma.
Yeah, wow.
And trauma comes with triggers. So we always need to be able to respond. But being non-judgmental, like the social work 101 principles are, we value every individual, we respect people, we work with a high level of integrity, we're trustworthy, we're honest, all those things. And you need to, social scientists and social workers need to be able to have high levels of empathy. But if everyone in my organisation only had high levels of empathy, that would be, we have to have a balance of all different types of personalities and skills. And I think, when you do, some of the coaching
Yes.
models of practice, we need to know, we've done some work in our team, because obviously in social work, if everyone wants to help and everyone's kind of, we need those proactive people. We need people like me to lead and make decisions. So a multidisciplinary team of skills, I think, is super important. And I love that all of our team wear multiple hats. They wear multiple hats. So, I have a journalist who's a professional journalist, but she's also a senior case manager. Fantastic. Great with some of the social media stuff, because, we don't have multiple layers of, departments and this and that. Everyone needs to do a few different types of jobs, and that really helps keep our organisation to the highest standard that it can be, because we've got one staff that can do 3 or 4 things. And if we've got 14 people that can do that, that's a lot.
Yeah, I think that's very interesting listening to you talk about the qualities of your team and how they interrelate to your clients and your residents, because, any business building goodwill needs to take quite an ingredients-based approach to building that element of their business model.
Yeah.
Do you have a business model as a not-for-profit? And where does quality fit with that business model?
Well, I suppose this does sound a little bit cliche. I suppose our business model is we're in the people business.
Yeah.
One of the things that I am incredibly proud of is that our team, every single person in our team has a level of qualification, irrespective of the work that they do. So everyone is trained to do community services work.
Yeah.
Whether you work in admin, whether you work in donations, whether you do volunteer work, everyone is skilled. So everyone understands the foundational principles of what we're trying to achieve in the work that we do. That is a really good strategy for any organisation, because it can reduce the impact of psychological harm to anybody. Because if I have an admin person who's not trained and she hears things from conversations and things like that, and there are things that happen in office environments that you can never not, you can never stop from happening. The fact that the person is trained to hear that, understands, can align that with the practice, it does actually help, the team be able to manage with the type of work we do, because some of the work is quite challenging, as you would imagine.
Of course.
Some of it's quite complex. Team culture is gold. I will tell you that I will work as hard as I can to get a really positive, engaging culture in my team, as hard as any other element of what I do, because I suppose a beautiful humming team that all come together.
Yes.
It's like, it is an orchestra. It is, it really is. And it makes the difference. Positive culture, positive outcomes, positive business.
So if I was to talk to the orchestra,
yeah,
being your team, and ask them 3 words to describe the culture that they believe they're part of, what would those words be, do you think?
I mean, I've heard them all talk recently because we did some sort of stuff together. And I think one of the things is that there's a high level of trust.
Yes.
There's a high level of trust with each other. There's a trust in their professional capabilities. There's a trust in their skill, but there's a trust in each other. And I think, it's when something goes wrong or something happens, and, every organisation, day to day, there'll be a few things that happen. And I see them pull together, not
okay.
apart.
Okay.
No one plays the blame game.
No.
No one starts to look for the problem causer. Everyone goes,
It was that one, not me.
exactly.
Yeah.
And then that's in, people that work in those kind of environments become very defensive, because then it's about protection.
Yes.
Whereas, I learned early on as a leader, it's actually not what happened. It's what did we do and what will we do next time? That's it. Come to me with anything, because I don't want people not to feel like they can bring something to me. I love my team. I love working with the people. I love the work. I want to make sure that everyone is safe, psychologically safe, comes to work, enjoys themselves and has a voice, and that will be respected.
But that's a really interesting characterization of culture, I think. It's sort of, isn't it obvious? But I don't know that it is too obvious, because if you think about trust, if everyone has the same level of trust in the team they're working in, it creates an environment where people work differently, because they don't feel, well, I think they do feel they can probably be vulnerable in front of everyone, and that's okay, because they're not going to be persecuted for it.
Yeah.
But also, I guess, your residents, your clients, they need to be able to trust the service that they're getting from the shelter. And so by having a team that's in a trusting environment, that's a good element, right?
Absolutely.
And you touched on something before there, and I found interesting, and that is, even if people are in admin roles, they're trained to a degree in the profession and practice that's offered. And I think, again, that must help in terms of removing the them and us.
Oh,
in
absolutely.
a team.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, some great learnings here, audience, for any business owner. I can tell you, Narelle, we value a lot of businesses.
Yeah.
Financially value them. And increasingly we're looking at things like people and culture as being major contributors to goodwill and therefore the value of the business. And so hearing how you built that team and how it gels together, I think is an important insight. Where did you talked about some learnings, leadership learnings. Where did you get your capabilities to run an organisation like this? Because it's a challenging role, I imagine. You've been in it 5 years as CEO. And what are your core strengths, and where do they come from, and how have you displayed them in the organisation that you're in?
I suppose from my training, I'm a social scientist, and social scientist is half social work and half leadership. So I was always, I always wanted to be involved in working in a community service response, but I always wanted to have a leadership role, because that was something that I really enjoyed. I love the fact that you can come up with an idea, put it into plan, maybe get some funding for it, put it into action, and then see the results.
Yes, okay.
That is absolute gold to me.
Seeing the full thing play out.
From concept to design to maybe a grant application to that coming out. And for me, because I'm in the people business, when something comes off, that means someone's life might change for the better. And I couldn't think of anything better to do with my life, purposeful, in having that happen. I was a senior executive. I was a head of mental health services for an organisation. And so prior to working in this organisation, I worked for another organisation for 8 years. It was a very large, one of the big four organisations in community services. And I think for me, my leadership journey was that I've done every single job you can do in a refuge.
Right.
Every job. I've been a child support worker, I've been a refuge worker, I've been a team leader, I've been a program leader, senior program, regional manager, head of practice, and now I'm a CEO. So I suppose for me, my leadership journey was every time I did a role, I loved it so much, and then I was, I've had the pathway of going to that next step. But because I know what it's like in every element of the job, I think that's really important for me as a leader. I've worked for and I obviously wouldn't name names, but I've worked for some really good ones and some really bad ones. And I think the biggest learnings were the ones that I really struggled with, that were my managers,
Yes.
where they were either micromanaging me, or, they had perhaps a bit of a punitive way of, being very director type leadership. And I sort of thought, if I ever got the chance to be a leader, I want to have strong leadership in leading where we're going, but I want to be collaborative. I want to be kind. I want to make sure my team feels safe and secure, and have a really beautiful place. I want it to be a beautiful place to work, because, I've worked in places where the work is hard, it's very challenging, and you go to work and you can feel the tension.
Of course.
And it's horrible. It's horrible.
Yeah.
It's horrible for everyone.
Yeah.
And, the other thing, the business people that you're working with now, they mightn't realise that we're on site in someone's home. So they see us every day where they live.
Yeah.
So what we role model, they learn from. So, you and I working together every day, something stressful happens, they might see it, the fire alarm might go off or whatever. How I respond, how I talk to you, they see that. If we have a challenge and we work it out, they learn from that.
Yes.
So there's a role modelling aspect of what we do. But I've done the 7 Habits of a Highly Effective Leader. I've done Think, Lead, Create. I've done coaching. I did a business and management leadership diploma for Australian Service Excellence Standards accreditation.
Right.
And I recently just finished, I was saying before we kind of started, I just finished a diploma of counselling. I did that because I want to be a better communicator, not necessarily because I won't counsel you.
I was hoping for my therapy session.
I know, when I saw the couch, I thought that was so
When
funny.
does the therapy session start?
Do you know
I'm
what?
expected.
I know, exactly. Well, I did it because I've got 14 different staff, and I have to be able to communicate in different ways with all of them. And I think that's like that person-centered model. Each staff member is different. Each staff member needs something different from me. Each staff member, I have to understand what they need and how they want me to communicate with them, and then I have to respond.
I love that.
Do you?
Well, I do, and I love it. It was a hard lesson for me to learn as a young executive in a very large Australian public organisation in the early 30s, and I just assumed that everyone was the same. And the real issue was, how do we grow the business and increase profit and work as hard as possible to achieve that? And it took me a long while to work out that, in fact, no, everyone's got, slightly different motivations and slightly different strengths and weaknesses, and, reacts differently. You can't just push the button and they turn on 100%, or
no one size fits all.
No. God, if only I knew,
What I know now.
Absolutely, absolutely. Those poor people, suffered my lack of wisdom.
I've been there.
I do reflect on that,
Yeah.
right? And I think any business owner listening to the discussion the last 5 minutes about people and how to manage people and get the most out of people and work together and protect people in that environment. This is not just a charity and not-for-profit gig. It's fundamental, right? Isn't it? When you think about it. And we haven't talked about any dollars and cents, but I firmly believe as people, we have so much potential that we're not really delivering. But being able to cultivate a team environment like you're talking allows that to come to the fore, which must be satisfying for you as you work through the organisation.
I've always had this philosophy: I never ever worry about the money, and that would probably worry most people. As a CEO, I probably should, but I never worry about the money. I've just got this theory: if you do really good quality work and you have really good quality outcomes, and people that are coming through our service have a good experience and they share that, then the money will come. Because what we are there to do is provide a really high quality practice service, and if someone comes through my service and that is a really good experience for them, and they can share that, or it's not like we've got complaints or people being discharged from service because, we're not
Yes.
doing good quality intake, or we get the wrong people and then they come and they're not happy and they leave. The same thing in any business environment. Someone who's dissatisfied with the service they get can do so much damage. But if you can create an environment where every element of what you do, from the onboarding to someone coming in to supporting them, and keep maintaining that, the minimum baseline is good quality, high quality, best practice, then the outcomes are there, and then people will want to contribute to that, because people don't just want to donate to services. They want to see what's happening, and they want to be attached to good quality outcomes, good quality services, and you only get that with good quality people.
Feel the energy in the room, Narelle. Like a business owner, business leader that has confidence in their proposition, right?
Yeah.
To say the money will come if we do the little things well, and provide a quality service. The money will come. And at the end of the day, at the outset, we talked about goodwill. Well, goodwill is about sustainability of an organisation, essentially. We measure it as value as sustainability of earnings. In other words, how predictable and likely are the earnings today going to be the earnings tomorrow and the next day? And what are the risks, given the strengths and weaknesses of the organisation and external factors, that those earnings are going to be impacted, right? But being able to be confident as a business leader to say, if we do these little things right and do them consistently in a disciplined way, the rest will take care of itself. And that's a very practical definition of goodwill in my opinion.
I think it is too.
Yeah. Now, quality. You told me that quality, and you've been alerting to it. Talking about it, but you told me yesterday when we spoke that quality is one of the cornerstones of the organisation. Talk to me about how important that is and how it's sort of displayed itself and how you've nurtured it, I guess, through the journey that you've had in the last 5 years.
Yeah. I think going back right to the beginning when I first started, so I'd come from an organisation and I was a project lead to run an Australian Service Excellence Standards at a previous organisation that I'd worked with. So I'd just done a short stint on that. And I'd also, in my previous role, I had done the NDIS accreditation process as well. So, accreditation is part of the work in community services. So when I came to Northern Beaches Women's Shelter, I knew that we would be moving towards doing the Australian Service Excellence Standards. I knew that would probably really worry everyone. I don't know if any of you guys, but whenever we say accreditation, everyone starts freaking out. And so I just thought, how do I make accreditation fun? And I actually thought it's actually the way that we work. Rather than thinking about we do this for an audit, we prepare for the audit, we get everything ready, it was actually that ACES is the new way of working. ACES is the new way that we are going to be working, and it's actually changing the way that we actually provide our service.
So ACES being? Australian
Service Excellence Standards. So So basically it's rather than preparing for the accreditation, getting everything ready, doing it, and then panicking before the next one in 3 years when you have your review, I just started to really slowly look from top down, what did we need to do and what needed to change to implement that accreditation process. So, we took our time. We did it over 3 years, getting ready for the accreditation. And it really started as step one for us, because obviously our client work is the main part of our work, making sure that every element of our client work met the Australian Service Excellence Standards. And then we started to look at, okay, so what's the next bit? Obviously, governance in a community services organisation is really important.
Very important,
We have a continuous improvement model. So, and I think, for those of you who know, social workers and community services, we are very reflective. We're always looking, even when I have a conversation with a resident and I sit down, I go back and I think what worked, what didn't. We always look at what we do well, and we always think about how could I improve that. We do that all through our practice. We do that all through our service.
Listen in, business owners here. Very simple. Sounds very simple, right? But it sounds like it's not just a thing that happens occasionally. It's a regular part of just the way you do business.
Exactly. Yeah. And you know what? When I first over years, refuges have changed. You know, when I first started working in the sort of organisational sector years ago, and I started in a refuge, that was my first job. It was the professionals knew what to do, and they guided what the resident would do. That's changed. Person-centred is we're both on level playing fields.
Yes, yeah.
The person who's experiencing the service is the expert.
Yep.
I have practice skills, but I'm not an expert in someone's life. But I can actually create pathways of opportunity, and that person can choose to step in. But I don't say, if you do this, this will happen. If you do this, this will happen. If you don't do it, then you're not complying with our service model. You have to leave. So all that sort of, I suppose, in a way, it's controlling of a service has gone. And I remembered when I did some funny things when I first started. So we used to have a situation where we had a little shop. So we've got a shop, it's free, the food's there, the women could come. And they used to have certain times that people could come and get the food.
Yes.
And I used to go, and this is my favourite question. So tell me, why do we do it? Why do we do that? Why do we have this time thing, whatever? Oh, well, you know, because we've always done it that way. Okay, so why? And then and then why? And we'd get to, because we've always done it that way. So what would it look like if we did something differently? What would it look like if the shop was open all day and all night? What would it look like if the residents ran the shop?
So is that a key trait of a good leader in a business or an organisation? To simply sort of be the facilitator of a discussion like that? I think so.
I mean, my team would say something which they always say about me. When they say, can we do something, I never say no, I say how. So to me, that's a really good skill, and they laugh about that. They go, she doesn't say no, she says how. And I suppose because if we're going to do something, I want to understand what is it that we need to do.
Yes.
Not always coming with, no, too many risks, no this, no that. Like, you know, I mean, for me, we're in the safety business, there's always going to be risks. So I know that the work that I do, there is an element of risk. But I always want to outweigh, what are the risks, can I mitigate them, and is it going to have a really good positive benefit for the person that experiences our service or the organisation?
The return, right?
The return, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, when I think about the why, I think sometimes, and, you know, I've been victim of this myself, where you just do stuff, and it's not until a new worker comes on or someone joins the team and they go, oh, why do you do it that way? And you go, well, I don't know. Why? What would you think? What are the other options? So take your hat off, take the safety hat off, take the way that you've always done something, and when someone raises something, don't go, oh my gosh, here we go, we're going to have to review this, change this, do this. Think about the opportunity of what that might benefit for the organisation or for a practice or a purpose or a process or whatever.
Yeah, I think that's really insightful for any business owner or leader in a business is, you know, in other words, engage your team, because
Totally.
they might just have a little gem that you don't know about. You mentioned accreditation. And as you were talking about it, I thought to myself, I wonder how many people in business look at the word accreditation and then have an equal sign to compliance. But then you said, we make accreditation fun. So that made me think, does that mean that you're using this accreditation as a competitive advantage effectively and sort of engendering it as a way of doing business rather than sort of protecting against risks necessarily? Or are you doing it for both?
I mean, I suppose for us, when I say us, I say me and the team.
Yeah.
You know, I think the thing is that the accreditation process is part of what our sector would see as best practice. So for me as a leader, I want to be running an organisation that meets that benchmark. So I suppose there is that advantage that I will be able to go for different types of funding that maybe someone who doesn't have that accreditation certification. But also the thing is that I brought the team on the journey.
Yes.
I bought the team on the excitement and the possibilities of, you know what, we're going to look at the way we do this, and then we're going to look at it, benchmark it against the ACES accreditation standards, and then we're going to make some positive improvements. What do you guys think about that? What do you see that we could do? So rather than me making the direction around, I know what to do, I knew what we needed to achieve, but if I'm directing that from the front and, you know, I turn around and no one's there, I'm on my own. If I bring the team, you know, if we start to share the responsibility around, look, you guys that work directly with the residents, I want you to work on the program guide. I want you to think about, if I was a resident, how do we develop a program guide that's trauma informed and, you know, client centered?
Yes.
You know, when you call me, and the first thing I say is, you know, what's your name? What's your number? Bloody blah. But I'll say, thank you so much for calling. Look, can I just get your number in case the call drops out?
Yeah.
Straight away you go, oh, okay, she's interested in hearing from me, rather than name, number, what's your date of birth? You know, there are certain things that we get that we have to ask, but there's certain ways that I can do it in a trauma-informed way that, one, has me engaged, two, I build rapport with the person without feeling like I'm interrogating the person. What brought you to my service today? You know, instead of, why are you homeless?
I use this word regularly with my team and sometimes with clients, in a sense of saying it's either a relationship or it's a transaction. Now, which do you want it to be? Because I do feel a relationship, by definition, tends to last longer. Now, it can be a bad relationship, I guess. And that's where some of the attributes that you just spoke about are so important. But sometimes leaving a client or a staff member with a very transactional perspective leaves everyone a bit cold and doesn't get the most out of a situation. You know?
I hate that word, transaction.
Oh, sorry.
No.
I was using it in a negative, right?
No, it is. It's great.
I feel it's a negative.
Do you know, I remember once, and this is years ago when I was working in a business environment, and I used to run a program called emergency relief. And emergency relief was that people would come in and sit down. They were in high levels of financial stress, and we would provide food, vouchers, blah, blah. And then it became transactional. Because there were a lot of people that needed help. How do we increase the amount of people that we need to help? Let's start doing phone-based work. It was a disaster, because transaction is start and finished. Professional relationships with people are ongoing. People that come into our service and stay for a period of time and then leave our service, if it's a professional relationship, they'll probably re-engage at some point. I still get cards from people that have left our service a long time ago just saying, I just wanted to write to you guys to let you know that I've just finished doing this study, or I've just got this job, or I've just moved to this. That's the professional relationship.
Yes.
And that comes with, I want to champion you when you're in my service. I want to celebrate your wins. I want to make sure that where you start is not where you finish, and the goals that you're able to achieve set you up for the rest of your life.
So longevity is a big issue, and in Goodwill, it's all about longevity, you know, and
it is.
because it's the value that drips in over time and continues to drip in because of the way people feel or have been treated as a part of the service they've delivered, whether it's, you know, in the shelter or in any business. You know, it's a bit like a business with a really strong network. That network's, you know, really strong when people keep coming back. You know, a very obvious part of Goodwill is referrals. You know, the fact that people are referring you because they feel that they want you to experience the value that they experienced. Just on referrals, it's a funny sort of segue, but but it intrigues me about a not-for-profit charity and how you raise your funds. How does your Goodwill and your business model and the quality aspects help with that? And what are the biggest challenges in raising finance to do what you need to do?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell everyone the biggest lesson that I've ever learnt is that when someone makes an inquiry to learn about what's happening in your service and wants to know a little bit more about what you're doing and comes to you to say, an example, Christmas time, oh look, we've got some money, we'd like to contribute to the shelter, is there something that you guys think that you might like to need? Me making that call back, having the discussion, talking about our programs, talking about things that need funding, getting that person a really clear understanding what do they want to be attached to in their giving.
Yes.
Perfect example, someone talks to me, I'm really interested, we want to see women educated. Well, we're just about to run our Empowerment Circle program. It costs like, $20,000 a year to run that program. I'd really like to contribute to that. They might contribute to that. In 3 months' time, I tell them about the program. I tell them how many women have participated. I give them feedback about the outcomes of what's happened there. Never, ever, ever forget to say thank you to someone is really what I'm trying to say. Thank you is so important. If somebody contributes something, you've got to then repay that back with what value did that add.
So don't just take, but give back in terms of the information on what they've contributed to you.
100%. And even if it's a small contribution, it's still important. It's actually bringing the people that want to be a part of your organisation, because when they become a donor or a philanthropist is involved in your organisation, we call that you're part of the MBWS family. You come on the journey of learning. You come on the journey of actually being part of the solution of changing someone's life for the better. And so the family grows.
Yeah.
So it's not, thank you, see you later, next one. It's actually about, we value every dollar. We say thank you to every donor. We keep our donors updated with what we're doing. We want to share our resident wins where we can. We want to let them know what's happening in the sector if there's challenges. So it really is that process of making sure people are really, I suppose, they feel a part of it,
It's interesting though. Do you think that technology and AI and other things is working against that sort of deep two-way communication process though? As things go on, is there a risk?
Technology's killing me.
Is there a risk of that? Like, do you think?
I've got to be honest with you. Because I'm in the human services business, I just love being with humans. I love having this. This to me is gold. Like being with someone in the same room and having a conversation. Me being able to see your social cues and seeing you have your open open body language. When you're working with people with technology, you write something, you read it back, it seems okay, maybe it doesn't convey the message properly. It's a lot of this digital based stuff. For me, I love to pick up the phone. I do it as much as possible. I get about 165 emails a day. I make sure I respond to every single one before I go to bed. I highlight all the ones that I have to come up to in the morning that I've got to respond to, because communication is really important. And there's nothing worse than making a call and not having someone respond back. And what I love about MBWS Family, perfect example, someone texted me last night to say, I've been trying to get in touch with X, Y, and Z. They haven't got back to me. Can you follow that up for me? But the fact that they can reach out to me, I love that, because that's, you're a part of our organisation. And
I think that, look, there's some very important insights for any business, any organisation in that, because on the one side, we've got to be more efficient, more productive, and technology and AI and other things helps, do repetitive things in a more streamlined way. But be careful not to streamline the value
yourself out the door,
out of your organisation, out of your business model. I think in many respects, if I reflect on it, I think the most valuable businesses moving forward will be the ones that harness technology in certain ways, but hang on to some of the traditional, and I sound like an old bugger here talking about it, but some of the traditional human human interactions, because unless the product is a very commodity styled product that you're selling, part of the emotion of the interaction with the product is the value. It is the goodwill associated. So be careful not to dumb it down too much.
I find that, it's something really interesting. Just when you were saying that, it irritates me to absolute core. When you see someone and they start having an email conversation with someone, and it's like there's like 10 back and forths, and it literally would be less than a couple of minute conversation on the phone, or they're in the next room and they're emailing people. Just pick up, go next door, have a chat, and it does. And I think, do we sometimes not want to communicate because, because it might be a little bit more of an effort, but that's the relational stuff. That's what keeps, I suppose, the team cohesion. We're always talking, we're always sharing, we're always coming together, that kind of stuff. So, and I would imagine in a business environment, if you distance yourself too much from your consumers and people that are actually the people that are using your products, I would imagine they're your gold, and you want to understand them as much as possible. So you want to create that engagement, not distance to that. So I think technology is a real change for us. It's for me, I'm old as well. I started with typewriters and now, and a mobile phone that I could carry in a suitcase to now I can't find it. It's too small in my handbag. But, it's like this change of the way of working, and this constant agility and adaptability that we need to have. And even me, as much as sometimes I love technology and hate it, I know I have to keep up with it. We have to keep so far in advance of making sure. But it's a proportion of business that's important. But the people business, because I'm in the people business, actually, having that relational professional contact is just so important. It's with our stakeholders. It's, if I get up and we have opportunities for our philanthropists to come together, and we have maybe our top 20 or our top 10 or and just have an intimate setting with, a few of our executives or key players in our organisation, and they can really talk to us and understand that's really good for them. It's
at
respect.
The end of the day,
yep.
At the end of the day, that's why they're involved, aren't they? They want to know that they're, in a small way, they're making a difference.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just in terms of making a difference. In your world, there's a few big challenges. We've got a housing crisis in Australia. Mm-hmm. We've got a homelessness crisis. Mm-hmm. We've got huge issues with domestic violence. Mm-hmm. So they're big policy-related and advocacy-related issues that are not going away and are challenging to address. Mm. And then we've got organisations like the Northern Beaches Women's Shelter that's at the coalface trying to figure out how to service people affected by those issues, but also to make a difference. Now, as a business, as an organisation operating in that environment, there's a lot of balls there. Like on the one side, I guess you probably play a role in the advocacy space. I don't know.
Absolutely.
And then on the other side, you can't just participate in the down and dirty. To be successful, you've got to make a difference. So how do you pick and choose the priorities in a sort of a business setting like that with your management team and also with your board? It must be challenging, right? Is it?
It is. I suppose in the time that I've been involved in working in the sector, there's been a lot of transformative changes. Domestic and family violence now, obviously, there's more conversation, there's more awareness. But where you have more awareness, sometimes then you have more people that you need to support. So, it's a growing area of need that we can't fulfill, and you'll hear, I was on a specialist homeless services meeting today, and they had the Minister Rose Jackson on there, and we're all saying the same thing. Services are overflowing with people that are needing help. There's, as you've mentioned, there's affordability, housing issues, there's stock issues, there's a rental crisis, there's an economic crisis. The crisis goes on. And I suppose for me, I've got to look at the bigger picture, then look at my service operation,
yes,
and then think about what's possible.
Yeah.
So what can we do in trying to impart our little bit of positive difference that will impact the bigger picture? Now, if every single service in every single area has the same thing and we all do a small bit, then eventually that could make a bit of a chunk in the pie of change. So I'm the chair of the Northern Beaches Domestic Violence Network. I'm also the deputy chair of the Homelessness Interagency for our area. I work with 32 organisations as the chair of the DV network. To me, information, awareness, prevention. I go and talk in schools. we do lots of things in our area, 16 days of activism. We have activities where we do a walk. We have to engage the community. We have to educate our philanthropists and our donors. We have to make sure that we do all the things to keep people in our community safe from our service perspective. I have to bring the board on the journey because, I'm going to be asking for some things and, there's going to be some decisions that they're going to have to make. And I suppose it's like keeping everyone informed to the level so that they can make the decisions that they need to. So if it's a resident's decision about safety and what are my options around accessing a service.
Yes.
If it's someone, preventative in education, it might be that if I'm educating people about what are the signs and symptoms or red flags of a relationship that might help someone not engage in a domestic violence relationship or know to get out of a relationship before they start getting in too deep, all those things. Or I'm in a relationship and it's unhealthy, what services are there?
Wow.
Like all those responsibilities I take, very seriously because it's not just me and my team running our service. It's me working with our service partners. It's working with our referrers. It's engaging with governments on all levels because they all have different levels of funding that are available. So for me, I want to know what's happening in government. What is the directions? What are the strategic directions? What are the plans? In all those areas. So I can think about our service model, what we need to do, how do we keep abreast of what's going to be happening so that we don't become irrelevant and then we can't continue and have longevity and sustainability of our service.
Yeah, because I guess there is a risk that you do become irrelevant because you try to do too much.
Oh, yeah, the balance.
Yeah.
The balance.
Yeah. So who's your rudder in that? Is the board the rudder or are you a very organised, prioritising type of person, or is it someone, or is it a number of members of your team, or is it a function of all of that, right? Because my sense is in business, any business, there's so many things to do. In fact, the world is getting more complex, not less. There's more regulation, more compliance, plus things are competitive. So it's a challenge for all business owners to say, well, I could do 10 things today, but actually there's only 3 of them that really matter. But it's getting to that focus point, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think definitely priorities, definitely understand what is your core business. I mean, our board have been incredible in the time that I've worked with them. They're all amazing, just such skilled people. And I think for me that's really important because, you want your board to be so skilled that when you reach out for help or you ask those questions that they come with that layer of knowledge and skill and expertise that really can help you, because for me as a leader, when I get challenges, I need my board. I need to be able to draw on them and I need to get the advice and the support and the encouragement and also sometimes the decisions to get over the line. I am highly organised. I am a control freak. But I try and do my best not to be too controlling to my team, but it's more around I am a forward thinker. I do need to be contained. I do like big picture thinking.
Yes.
I love the board have a solid strategy of what we're trying to achieve. As a CEO, my job is to implement the operationalising of that strategy.
Understand.
Yeah. So it comes from them, but there's opportunities and things that come our way that I present to the board. Not everything gets over the line. I do try and get as much as possible over the line.
How do you feel going to the board? Do you feel like the board's a handbrake sometimes, or alternatively, are they encouraging you to go further sometimes, or both?
I don't think our board are a handbrake. I think our board are incredibly innovative, and I would say that is one of the reasons that I've wanted to continue and stay in this job for 5 years and hopefully longer, because I think this is an opportunity that we have at the moment in our organisation to continue to grow. We are on a bit of a growth bit, and look, it's a double-edged sword, because when we're growing, it means that more people are in need. I wish we didn't need our services at all, and our board would say exactly the same thing. When you know that people, I think I'm still turning away 400 people a year that need help, that we can't, and that driving evidence makes you want to do more. And that's what, the board is on board with that, because they want to make a difference. We don't want people, at risk or being on the streets or not having anywhere to live. It's a human right.
Of course,
to have housing.
Of course it is.
Yeah.
And dare us talk about numbers, but how many people do you service now? Women and families.
Yeah.
And how many did you start servicing 5 years ago? Well, you didn't start then, but when you...
When I first started, we were working with about 72 residents in outreach, and it was about, 35 to 40 in crisis care.
Yes.
We now have 70 women in our accommodation every single day. We're going to support in accommodation this year between 200 and 250, because obviously we go to the end of the financial year, and we give information, advice and support to 500 women and women with children a year.
It's amazing, eh?
So out of that 500, 200 are accommodated.
Right.
So, when we first started, we've provided over 680 women accommodation, crisis accommodation, since 2010 till now. Now we're providing 200 or 250 a year, and we're giving, information, advice, support, taking calls and all that kind of stuff to 500 women a year, which is incredible.
Plus their children.
Yeah, plus the children. Yeah.
And I understand there was a period at which you had sort of co-located residences for victims, and take us through that process of reconsidering that from a quality and service perspective, because we touched on it when we talked.
Yeah.
I thought that was an interesting dynamic, and in terms of a sort of an offering and a business model decision. Yeah.
So that's probably the only good thing that happened in COVID, and I don't mind sharing that. So when I first became the manager, we just kind of started to go. It was early days, just straight into the pandemic, which obviously was a shock for everyone. And I suppose New South Wales health regulation came in and was saying that you couldn't have certain things because of distance, and obviously in shared services we had shared rooms. In one way, it was a gift, because it meant that we had to look at how we were offering our service. And I suppose at that time we didn't have to increase the accommodation, because, everyone was kind of in lockdown and all those sorts of things. After we came out of COVID, I put it to the board that the feedback that we got from the women that came into our service and didn't have to share rooms, the level or the reduction in conflicts that we were resolving in the house, because people were sharing, so many people sharing in a house that we didn't have before. And what the transformation piece, which was the evidence that I had for the board, people weren't returning to our service from homelessness again. So we weren't having people return, because people used to come to our service, stay a week, stay a couple of weeks, leave, come back again.
Yeah.
If someone comes in, they've got safety, they've got dignity, they've got time, they've got their own room, they've got all these, I suppose, this little healing environment.
Yes, of course.
To recover, they could work on their goals. And so they were staying longer, they were achieving their goals, and then they weren't returning. Because
they were stronger.
Exactly. Yeah. And it wasn't a hard sell to the board, because when I could show the evidence that, well, this is what we used to have. Yeah, we had high numbers, but this is the outcomes.
But I think that's so commercial. You probably didn't expect me to say that, right?
No, it is.
But it's so commercial, but it's so service orientated. I mean, but it's a commercial decision, right?
Yeah.
In other words, board, for the time being, we're going to serve less, but we're going to serve them better.
Yeah.
So, do you either want to, focus on the top line run rate,
Yeah.
or focus on the quality and the of the performance of what we're delivering.
Yeah.
And and get a sustainable result for our client, and therefore a sustainable result for our organisation, because presumably if they're getting a good experience, they're going to be talking about it about us, right? So I mean that's a classic business decision, isn't it?
One of the unpredictable things that happened, it improved our reputation as a service.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
And that, because can you imagine if people are coming in, they're not staying, they're leaving, then they return to homelessness, then they go to other services, then they say, oh, well, I only stayed there for a week. All those kind of things can damage your organisation. When people have good outcomes, when people have good experiences, and they go and talk about it, and, then that's that change piece, that actually improved our organisation reputation.
And that right there is goodwill. That is goodwill, dripping off goodwill. It is.
Yeah.
And it's beautifully put, right? Because it's a real live example.
It's simple, but it's
but it's gold. In terms of delivering long-term sustainable value.
But and I suppose that there was one thing that, and I suppose, trying to, present a good business case to a board, we try and, have as much evidence as possible. And that's why the data and all those kind of things are really important when we're doing it, how many hours each, we have track of every iteration, client engagement, meeting, times, case coordination times. I can prove evidence-wise, if I've got one worker, they've got X, Y, Z number of clients, they're doing X, Y, Z number of work hours, I can say, well, I need another worker because there's the gap. So it's not even me, it's the evidence showing it. But reducing the number of people that we had in our service, that was an ethical dilemma that I had to present to the board, because, how can we not have people in our service knowing that they're going to be on the street? So my challenge to the board was to go back and say, I agree 100%. You guys need to find more accommodation for me. And they did. And
really?
They did. It's like, it's not a numbers game. We're in the people game. We need more dignified accommodation. And then they just went out and found it, those people. And to me, that's a board that you want, because they get it, they know what we're doing, and then they're very purpose-driven into being able to help and support that outcome. So, yeah.
What are you? I know Rosie's on your board. What are the capabilities of your board? What do they come from? Different experience sets and
we have a skills-based board, which is really important. So each board member has a portfolio, and I don't know if anyone else works with boards, but that is crucial. You need a lawyer on your board. Lawyers think differently to everybody else.
They're very weird. But I have a family member who's a lawyer. But
they always say, have one in the room. I need one with me at all times because I'm 100% liability. But, business people, having people that understand the practice. So, we've got someone that comes from a social work community service background that's, very experienced, someone who has fundraising skills, experience with, philanthropy, someone who has property experience. I mean, in our business, property is really important.
Big issue, yeah.
We have a HR board member who's, an employment lawyer, which is just fantastic. We've also got, Rosie as our chair, who obviously is a highly skilled business person, but also, has skills in psychology as well. So, she gets the work and worked in government and community services before, she had her own business. So I think a multidisciplinary skilled board. Oh, and we've also got an IT specialist as well. So having all of the elements, and our treasurer, who's a very skilled chartered accountant, all of those skills. So each board member has a portfolio, which is good for me, because, if I'm doing something with finance, then I go to the treasurer. If I'm doing something with X, Y, and Z, I can draw in that specialist skill to help me. So
I think I imagine your role's a bit like the quarterback in an American football side, right? So you've got to slip the ball to whoever's got the capability and expertise in a particular area.
Some things do find this very funny because there's one of me and there's like 8 of them. And sometimes they all ring me in one day, and it might be this one, this one, this one, this one. So try and get them all in the room at once. But I feel that, it's one of those things when you find your purpose and your passion, and every single one of them, I will say, because they're volunteers, they're
Yes.
and giving up their time, like that is a huge ask of anyone. But whenever I sit with any of them and I talk, and I always feel like, oh, I hope I'm not causing too much, of your time, and because I'm conscious of that. They're busy people anyway. And they go, I love giving my time to this cause. This is my happy place. And I'm just like, that,
Wow.
yeah,
Wow.
that is incredibly humbling. And it's interesting. Sometimes they give more to our organisation sometimes than they should, because, they've got their own lives and busyness going on, and their own businesses. So yeah,
But it's got a lot of energy about it. I can see that from you and the energy we've had in this discussion. What do you like most about your role?
Look, I love building a team. I love helping people grow to their best potential. Like, to me, that is a real honour.
Yes. Yes.
A staff member once said to me, he said, "You can see gold in people and bring it out." And because I like to push them into areas where sometimes they feel a bit uncomfortable, because I know their skills and I know their capabilities, and they might know they're ready, but I know they're ready. And I love that. And then doing that and stepping back. And so it's the same with the residents. Good quality social work. Every time a resident takes a step forward, I take a step back. That's empowering. That's them going to their independent life. So for me, the joy, I don't even know how I'm the leader, but anyway, so just keep that to yourself. But, for me, the joy of seeing our organisation, and I'm very proud of what we've been able to achieve in 5 years. And when you look at our annual reports to where we started to where we are now, we have an incredibly strong organisation. And that's because it's not one person. Every single person brings their A game every single day, from the board to right down to, our volunteers. Every single person is contributing, and, no one's getting a free ride. And I think that's what makes it work.
That's lovely, isn't it?
Yeah.
Now, I'm wondering if someone wants to contribute to Northern Beaches Women's Shelter, how do they go about it?
That's a very good question. There are a number of ways that you contribute. So, obviously we take donations, and you can go to our website, which is mbws.org.au. And, I think for me, one of the things that I don't know if everybody knows, a lot of funding opportunities, they will never fund staff. I don't know why. If anybody knows the answer to that, please text me. Our business is our professionals. What our housing specialist workers know around mapping pathways and opportunities and eligibility and getting those outcomes for people, that is money saved. Not having people spend too much time trying to go through all this application process actually costs money, because while they're accessing all these other, there's the balance of the drain there. So, volunteering, we take donations of everything. 96 cents directly goes to a resident. So, we're a very low level tiered business, which I think is good.
96 cents in every dollar
goes directly to a woman in our service.
Wow.
Yeah. So we have me, and that's it. So we're not one of the big four. We don't have a multi-level tiered structure. We've got a volunteer board. So, obviously very minimum cost there. There's me, and, we have a very small leadership team. And I suppose that's the good news story, that at least, I know from working in the charity, sort of sector for a long time, a lot of costs can get caught up in operational costs, and that's not what we have. So I think that's a good thing. So, from clothing to furniture, we're always setting people up in their new homes or their forever homes. When we want people to leave our service, we want to make sure that they have everything new or near new. So we set them up. So when they go into their unit or whatever their accommodation is, it's just like your house or my house. Everything's new, near new. They walk in and they go, and that helps them sustain their tenancy.
Of course it does.
Because it's, I think the other thing is like I wrote a program called Women's Choice Housing Buffer to try and get people into rentals. A lot of our women are very fearful if they've been homeless that they might lose or not be able to sustain a tenancy or a rental. So there's a thing called Housing Buffer, which is 24 payments of $100 that goes directly to the agent, not to us. but that gives that woman that insurance for 6 months.
Right, to get started, yeah.
Just get, when they're setting up the phone and the electricity and all those things, and you have more bills when you first go into a property or your own little rental, just having that buffer so that you don't end up in a financial risk. And it's a small price to pay. And if someone wants to contribute, it goes directly to that. And then you're helping someone. You're helping someone sustain.
It's a practical, direct
practical
opportunity to help someone,
Exactly. So for me, those constant things around innovations and initiatives, that doesn't mean I have to have millions of stock. There's other things that I can do, engaging with, real estate agents. If anyone has properties that are available for a short period, we can help house someone, and that might be life-changing for them. So there's lots of ways to help. I could go on forever. I promise I won't.
No, but if you want to help and make a difference to domestic violence and homelessness, then visit the website, contact the women's shelter, because there's plenty of opportunity to make a difference. I've just had a therapy session on as a business, how to develop and grow and build goodwill value. Narelle, I really appreciate your insights. I mean, clearly your organisation has developed a lot of goodwill, and it's doing so on a regular basis.
Yeah.
And it's going to stand it in great stead for longevity and sustainability. And certainly in your 5 years, not finished by any means, but you've created a storm out there that's exciting to see. So congratulations on your achievements, and a lot more to be done, we know, because it's such a big task. But really appreciate you being a guest on Let's Talk Business.
I've loved it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Done. Was that all right?
Yes. Great. Sorry I had a brain fart in the middle of it.
Oh, don't worry about that.